Okay, well, welcome everyone. This is the Mysteries of Christian Mysticism. And I thought tonight we would talk about going within. And as you know, in the Bible, Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within. And there are lots of other sayings, such as when you pray, go into your closet. Lots of references. But we know intuitively, and just when we go into meditation, that there is a domain that we're trying to get into, and that it's not of this world, that we're literally trying to turn away from the senses and go within. So tonight, what I wanted to do is really work with you and teach you how to go within. Let's just begin a little experiment. If you can sit up as straight as you can. You don't have to be perfectly straight, but let's put both feet on the floor and your hands in your lap. And let's just do a couple of deep breaths. So we're going to breathe in through our nose and breathe out through the mouth. And the object is to relax. And as you relax your body, you relax your mind. And the more relaxed your mind is, the easier it is to quiet your thinking. Your thoughts will naturally come to a halt the more relaxed you get. So let's breathe in, take a deep breath within. And then when you let it out with a soft, satisfying sigh. It's like, take another deep breath in, belly out, so you really fill your lungs. And then breathe out again with a nice sigh. And do that. Let's do this 2 more times. Breathe in and out. 1 more time. Breathe in. Breathe out. Okay, now with your eyes closed, visualize yourself standing in front of your house or in front of the building where you live. Look at it. See how much detail that you can remember. Fill it in as though you're composing a painting or photograph. Just get a sense of it out there in front of you. And now ask yourself, who's looking? And don't turn around and look at you standing there, but go within. Who's looking? Who's looking through your eyes? Notice how that person who's looking, you can't really see. You can't really see that person because you're not looking. You're not looking at, you're looking through. And the place you're actually standing within yourself is rather dark. It's like, because it's not in your field of vision. And as you sense it more and more, you realize that you're not looking at it with your eyes. This bypasses your visual cortex altogether. There's this, it's like this immense space behind you that you can't see. It's all dark. But that's where you are. You're in there. And you're looking out from there all the time. Now, the process of going within is to explore that space. And you can't explore by turning around and going into it. You have to back into it and just become more and more aware of who you are. And in this space, you have no name, you have no address, you have no body. You are a pure point of awareness. There are no thoughts in there. This is where Jesus was inviting us to go. And just keep backing up into it and be comfortable with it, because there's nothing dangerous there. There's nothing in there except God. God's in there. Pure awareness, pure, alive, awake awareness. And just lean back into it. Notice how there are no thoughts, because you're too busy experiencing to have thoughts. Just lean into the experience of it. Feel it. It's an embodied experience, but you're feeling it on a higher level than your physical body. Okay, so now let's come back out and become aware of your body if you've lost touch with it, and move your hands and feet, and when you're ready, open your eyes. So let's talk about that a little bit. How did that go for you? What did you experience with your thinking? What happened to your thinking? Yeah.
I was I kind of, I don't know how to explain this, but I had that awareness, or just this knowing that my body, my everything is more the tool or the lens that I use to look through, and I'm deeper than that. It's just deeper than that, and all, even my experiences are tools that I'm using to and then the I mean as being the deepest part of me, the highest self I am using to navigate in this type of world. I guess.
In this type of world, right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. What the hell is
Yeah.
going on here?
On this plane, that yeah.
Yeah, when I do this, I experience my body as like an instrument, but it's out in front of me.
Yes.
Almost, yeah.
I
So
get
almost
that,
like
yes.
a glove. It's like a glove that I've got my hand into operating, only it's everything. There are types of meditation that some people recommend, becoming aware of your surroundings. Like if you're outdoors in nature, that's a place where a lot of people like to meditate. But this is real meditation. The other is kind of like, it's more of a situational awareness. It's more of finding, a real harmony with nature, and an appreciation for the beauty of nature, and that kind of thing. But this is different. This requires really moving away from the senses. You're backing away from all sensory input. And as you do, then you become aware of that inner space. And so why would we do this? And again, I'd like to hear more of your experience of how you did just now, and also how that works for you when you're doing it on your own. Who would like to share?
Yeah, I'll share. So for me, two things. One, it felt in very much like waking up. Like I just woke up in the front of my house. Like I'm just waking up like that. And this visualization was very natural, easy, and the sensing of what was behind was just immense activity, but there's nothing that I could like put a finger, say with any words what that is or might be, but I could feel a lot of activity, a lot of life behind
Yeah.
the sense. And the waking up part was pretty, it made a very strong impression. Like that was just like, it was almost like I don't know how you say it, like I guess That's how I would say it. It was just like waking up right there, and you're there. And then I was just curious about the activity behind, but just staying present. And then when you said come back, there's a part of me that just wanted to just kind of stay there and kind of sense like more of what's going on here and in
Yeah.
this space. And even when I did bring consciousness back to this, uh, I could still feel and sense myself awareness from that point, from that perspective, like all
Yeah,
at the same time.
exactly.
That was my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. In the column of light meditation that I teach, that's the goal, is to be able to operate from that position. And what it does is it makes you more centered in who you actually are, and it gives you enormous objectivity, a very clear objectivity of the world. And that gives you so much more agency, the ability to observe what's actually going on, what's going on in other people. It makes you aware more of the reactions in your own body, because you're not in your body, you're not identifying with it, you're watching it. And so as a feeling comes up, you can go, what is that? What's that feeling? Where's it coming from? What prompted it? You see? So it really is the most profound way of getting into a true state of mindfulness, where you can observe the world as it happens in real time, in present time. Because when you're in that space, you're not looking into the past, you're not trying to be in the present, and you're not worried about the future. You're just in the present moment, but from a detached position. And that gives you a lot of control. And I don't mean control over other people, but control of yourself. And by that, it's especially, what am I going to say, right? Because we run our lives primarily by what we say and what we train people to expect from us. And then as they expect that from us, and we tend to play into that role. But it's a role we created, and we just trained everybody to expect us to perform in that role. So by going back into to your sacred space within, your holy of holies, this is the center of the temple. This is behind the veil, in the biblical symbology of the Temple of Solomon, that holy of holies behind the veil. And you're in there, but you're operating in the world. So this is it's a marvelous place to be. It takes practice, takes a lot of practice. But the more you do, then you find that activity, it'll become more and more obvious what that is, because that space, that inner space, is a world that's larger than this world. So I don't know if that spirit briefings that I sent out, if it's already gone out, but I said, imagine a ball that's about 12 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
Okay, that one, you saw that one?
Mhm.
So it's like you have this sphere, and it's opaque, but it's got a little hole in it that you can look inside. And when you look inside, the space inside the ball is enormous. Right? So that's impossible. That's paradoxical, right? But that's exactly the way it is. And this is something they talk about in quantum physics. I don't speak that language, so I can't relate that, but I've experienced it, where you go inside something that appears small, but when you get in there, then it's actually bigger. That's what happens when you go within, and that's what you were sensing. You're sensing all that activity, you see, and you experience that waking up, and you're waking up to, it's not another world, it's not another dimension, it's actually where you are. See, it's where you already are. so when Jesus, he said, I go to prepare a place for you, you know, and I think he said something like, where I go, you can't follow, at least not right now. But be aware that whenever Jesus speaks about himself, he's speaking for us. He's speaking for our higher selves. This is why at the end of his, well, actually, when he came back and was talking with his disciples, and he said, no longer do I call you disciples, I call you friends. You see, he's closing that gap. He's saying, I am you, you are me. We are together. The name Jesus Christ is a formula. The Jesus part is you, this physical personality, soul personality that you're manifesting. The Christ is the God part of you. And the two go together. You see, so everything that Jesus did, he was teaching us how to live and be from this point of being. And it's so different from the life in the world and what we're used to doing in the world. But those people who really turn history, you know, those individuals who are so profoundly authentic that their lives then become a pivot point for history, they live from that place. They have connection with that their inner part of their reality. They know who they are. And so, and by virtue of that, they are able to function in the world in a way that's profoundly powerful, has a profound effect on them, on everything. So this is really the path that Jesus was talking about and was trying to get us to follow. And of course, it's all laid out in symbolic language in his life. It's not to say that it didn't happen, you know, it's an entirely different issue. But unless we get that it is also symbolic, then we miss the point. All right, would anybody else like to share about their meditation?
I tried the meditation, Michael, that you taught us early on before you went on vacation. Yeah, the column. I tried that in not that many times, but I did attempt to do it at least more than a couple times. But what I saw was when I stepped back and then a few inches away, maybe two, you say 3 inches away from the back, I what I saw was like total red rays of well, I wouldn't say sunlight because it's not yellowish, it's total pitch red, but sort of like a fluorescent red.
Really?
And yeah, I just kind of stayed there, and I thought I could relate to that ball that you were saying. Once you look into it, I was just I, I wouldn't say I was really small, but the space is expansive. That I could say, but there was nothing in it. There was really
Exactly.
nothing.
Yes. Right.
Yeah. And not even thoughts were there. It was just blank, but I know that it's this kind of warmth in it. I don't know if that was because of the red fluorescent light coming to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it almost feels like it is a closed room, maybe as big as my closet, but that's all my vision could see.
So the red that you saw, Marianne, was it a shade of red, or was it like pure red?
You know, the red is not really that. It was almost like fluorescent red, let's say a watermelon red, just like what Maciel is wearing, but it's a bit more warmer than that.
Uh-huh.
And it's warm, but it's soft to the feeling. And it was almost, if I could describe it, it's almost like I am in the Sacred Heart of Jesus. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you could imagine that kind of soft redness and the funny thing, there was no happy, it was not like blissful moment, you know, it wasn't
Right,
blissful. It was just,
right.
it was thoughtless, it was nothingness. And I, I almost didn't know how to respond to it.
It's strange, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I'm interested in the color because there was a point in my training where I saw colors like that. It was just like this pure red or a pure green or sometimes a pure blue. And it was a phase that I went through, and then afterwards, then it gradually became, went into other, forms of light. But that's really good. That's really great because light is light. That's actually what's in there. And the reason we don't see it is because unless light hits something, it's invisible. So the light we're seeing, if it's a color like that, it means it's impinging upon part of us in that part of us that we're almost totally oblivious to, right? It's like Neo in the Matrix. They pulled him out of the Matrix and he's laying there on the table and he said, why do my eyes hurt? And Morpheus says, because you've never used them before. Great
Exactly
analogy.
what it is. It is exactly what it is, because, you know, that redness is like, it didn't hurt, but at the same time, it does warmth, and there is brightness, but at the same time, you know, I heard some other students of yours might have said like pitch black and stuff like that. That wasn't the case with me. Yeah, and it was so easy to step backward with the way you explain it. It was just, it was very, I wouldn't say easy. I would not say that in an attempt with other students or, you know, other practitioner to say that, but just because I was really following it, and I guess it was my attempt to get in there in a fresher way, and I thought, I was hoping maybe I could follow what you said and just attempt it myself, so that I could actually see that way of your instruction. And yeah, so it was.
Yeah, that's great. See, my job is just to get you there, and then together, as we work together like this and we talk about our experiences, then we make a greater sense of what we're experiencing, you see. But most people have no idea of even to go there. And yet, if you know how to read symbolic language, it's right there, right on the page in the Bible. It's exactly what he's talking about. You know, that sphere that I was telling you about, where it's bigger on the inside than the outside? That's what C.S. Lewis was talking about in the Chronicles of Narnia, where the kids go into the closet, into the wardrobe. You know, in those days, the closets were pieces of furniture, right? And you open the doors and they're big on the inside. So they go into the closet and they push the clothes aside, and all of a sudden they're in the middle of the forest in Narnia, you know? So this is like, I'm sure Lewis got the idea from what Jesus said: when you pray, go into your closet. Because, you know, the closets are like, they're in the center of the house usually. I know more modern houses have walk-in closets, and a lot of them have windows. But a lot of closets, the closet he's talking about doesn't have any windows, and it's in the center of the house. Just imagine it that way. And it's very small. It's not the kind of space you can actually kind of get into. So to go into your closet, you kind of have to open the door, turn around and back into it, and then close the door. You see? And then when you're in there, it's dark. And you're in a sensory deprivation space. And because you're depriving your senses of input, it shuts that down, that part of the brain, and other parts start to open up. And as they do, a lot of images come in. And so it's important to know that your imagination is a functional tool. You're not just making stuff up, but it's like an organ of perception. So you start to work with your imagination. So all of this to say that when we go within like that, there's an entire world to explore and to wake up in. But it's not like this world. So this is why so many people do not like meditation, because it's too strange. The quantum physicists talk about, one of them famously said, the world is not only stranger than we think, it's stranger than we can think. Because our brains and our bodies, our embodied experience is all geared to our senses. Everything is geared to our senses so that we can operate in this world and not die, right? So when we shut all that down, if we've spent our whole life living in the world of senses, then that's going to be a strange territory. And it frightens some people, but really they're just scared of themselves. See, they're not ready yet to leave the familiar world of sensory knowledge. You see. Now the fact that, Marianne, you saw light, this red light. The reason I use the column of light, and because it's easy to visualize, right? You can picture like a fluorescent tube, or a nice container, columnar shaped container with the light going all the way up and down. You put that behind you, and then you can't look at it, so you just have to sense it. And if your eyes are closed, you're not seeing the light, but you can feel the light. You feel it, and it's there, and you back up into it. And the common denominator for all light is that it's energetic. It radiates. It's power. It is manifest power. It's like sunlight is manifest. It's energy. Energy is power manifested. So when you begin to sense it in that way, when you back up into it, for me, it's like the same feeling when I plug in my phone. If you have a dock for your phone and you plug it into that dock, you can just feel it sucking up the electricity, right? You can feel it powering up. That's how it feels to me. When I visualize it as a column of light, when I back up into it, I feel like I'm plugging in to the very source of life itself. Life power, life energy then starts to flood into me, and I come out of it and I'm ready to go. My energy level just goes right up. My body feels better, it's looser, maybe more coordinated. It's getting more and more important every day. So this is like, and the more we plug in to this field of energy, which is where we actually live, a field of energy, we plug into that, it makes us more alive. We have greater enthusiasm, we have greater interest in things. Things start to matter more, and ideas start to pop. We get insights. Synchronicity goes way up, because we're hooked into the life energy of the universe, which is in all things and is one system working together. Let me read you some things that Meister Eckhart had to say. You know who Meister Eckhart was? He was a German theologian. He lived back in the 13th century. He was very fringe. He was a Franciscan priest, and they wanted to kill him for what he was saying. And they were going to kill him. They were going to burn him at the stake.
Of course they did.
Oh yeah, of course. But he outfoxed them. He died before they could. So here's what Meister Eckhart had to say. He said he encouraged individuals to detach from the distractions of the external world. Now Eckhart is everybody acknowledges him as a Christian mystic. He's kind of the benchmark. So he's encouraging individuals to detach from the distractions of the external world. He believed that by turning away from the sensory and material aspects of life, one could turn inward toward a deeper spiritual experience. He also spoke of the soul's innate desire for union with God. There's part of us, that deep inner part of us, wants to merge with God and become one with God. He emphasized that God's presence could be found within the depths of one's own soul, and that through contemplation and inner silence, individuals could experience this divine union. And he spoke of the birth of the word within the soul, which signifies the emergence of divine wisdom and understanding from deep within. This concept aligns with the idea that the divine can be realized within one's innermost being. So one of the biggest benefits we have in doing this kind of meditation is that it not only enlivens us, it not only raises our energy level, but it quickens the mind, and it gives us more access to divine wisdom. And what is wisdom? You know, it's not knowledge. You know, it's not like the accumulated knowledge of all the books in the Library of Alexandria or something like that. No, wisdom is simply knowing what to do and when to do it. Right? Wisdom is what Buddhists call right action. So that when you're connected with God, when you're experiencing union with God, then you can't help but be in the flow with God. Because God is a great being, and we're all living within this great being, and this great being is alive, and it has many parts, and all these parts are interacting with us. It's like any cell in the body. If you've seen those artistic renditions of the insides of cells, they're extraordinarily complex. They're like a universe within themselves. So we're in a being like that, and that being has life and energy and things going on, lots of activity in there. And that activity is always striving for harmony. It wants to be harmonious with itself. So as we connect in with God, we then automatically and quite easily and naturally, organically, you might say, we come into a harmony, a state of harmony with everything that's going on. And this is why you hear some people say that everything's perfect just the way it is, because they're speaking from that perspective. You see, once you're in harmony with God, then you can see the perfection in all things, how one thing leads to another, and if something happens over here, it causes this over here, and you see this intricate dance of all things in reality. But you can't really connect with that unless you experience it, unless you have the experience itself, yourself. And to do it is easy. It takes practice, yeah, but it's not out of your reach. In fact, you know, what we're talking about is what Jesus called the kingdom of heaven. He said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. This is what's within us. So we know that's what he's talking about. We can kind of reverse engineer that, right? We say, okay, he says the kingdom of heaven is within you. So we go within and we have this experience. So that's got to be it. Even though we're not seeing all of it yet, we're just babes yet in that domain. It gradually becomes more and more real, and to where we can have more agency with it. But that's what it is. It's the kingdom of heaven. So I forget where I was going with that. but people don't like that because it's too unfamiliar, and they're afraid of it because they don't have a sense of the love of God, that God's got your back, right? But you have to expect that. right? You can't go within the deeper realms of your mind looking for monsters, because you'll find them. If that's what you're looking for, you'll find them. And there are plenty of people out there who've done just that, and they're flat crazy. I'm sure you've seen them. They're tormented. But it's because they went looking for that, or because they have let themselves go to such an extent that there's too much of that in there, right? But most people, by far, most people don't have to worry about that, because lucky for all of us, psychopaths aren't that common. I know there are a lot of them, but there are not as many as there are of us. So trust is like, that's the first step on the spiritual path. You must have trust, and it's the trust to be led. You must allow God to lead you from within into those spaces that are truly your own. To trust God to lead you to your true self, your higher self, your inner being, the self. Because the opposite of trust is fear, right? It's fear. So fear is the bolt in the door to the entrance of the spiritual path. If you're afraid, you may not enter, and you may have people on the other side even preventing you from entering into this kind of work because it would be too upsetting to you. But none of us here have that to worry about. I mean, sure, we all have our problems. Who doesn't, right? We've all got things that we would never share with anybody else. Things that feelings and reactions that we have. But that's okay. That just means we're human. Doesn't mean anything else. Doesn't mean we're bad. It just means we're human. And we've got these things that need to be worked out, wrinkles that need to be ironed out. But there's the beauty of going within like this, is that power, that energy is a hell of an iron, and it gets rid of wrinkles real fast. So the more you do this, then it's transformative, which means it's going to show up in your external life. Things are going to start to happen. But the other beauty of it is, if it gets too intense, you can come out. And it's really hard to stay in there all the time anyway. So you make the direct intention to go within, to back up into that space, but then you open your eyes and whoosh, you're right back into this world, right? So there's not much danger getting stuck in there, although there are some practitioners who that's all they want to do, is to go in there and stay there. It's Tibetan Buddhism talks a lot about that. In Christian mysticism, it's called returning to the Father. In Buddhism, it's the path of the Arhat, the one who renounces the world totally, completely, and permanently, and enters into that space. And the balancing pole of the Arhat is the Bodhisattva. And that's the person who goes into there and knows the self, but then comes back out in service to the world until all sentient beings are enlightened. Right? And this is what Jesus spoke of in the Garden of Gethsemane. He said, knowing that he was going to his death, he said, he prayed to God saying, I pray not that you take my disciples out of the world. Just keep them from the evil. And by evil, he didn't mean people who wanted to kill them. That's not the kind of evil, because in another place in the Bible, he says, don't worry about people who can kill your body. I mean, your body's going to die anyway, right? We're all going to die. So that's not the part of you that you should be concerned about. He said, be careful of those who can cast your soul into hell. What does that mean? That means those who can confuse you, who can set up such a conflict within your own thinking and your own belief system that you are in a literal hell. You see, that he said, be damned afraid of that. Your body, not so much. So when he prayed in the garden to keep his disciples from the evil, that's the evil he was talking about. That's what we want to be aware of. We don't want to get confused. We don't want to get misled. You see, so in order to not be misled, you must find who you are and stand in that holy place. There has to be a part of you inside that stands there 24/7 and cannot be moved from that spot. And we all have it. It's just a matter of being aware of it or not. And this is an easy way to become aware of it. And I'm sure you can imagine what it would be like to have that kind of solid mooring in your life, because you're not going to be misled. You're not going to fall for anything. And so you get real sharp and your discernment gets really good. So all of these things have huge implications for the quality of life that we enjoy and for the quality of life that we can expect to carry forward into the future. Because unless we do, then we're easily misled, we're easily lied to. All kinds of hellish things start to happen. History is full of hell, right? Okay, what about you? What do you think of all this?
Question regarding finding the kingdom that you just mentioned now.
Mm-hmm.
So if I if for example that ball that you were referring to is the kingdom of God, and we're able to find that ball and really peek into it, may not be, just really peeking into it may not have a real sense of what it is, but it was good enough of a peek to desire that that alignment that you were saying, that you, let's say you have enough wisdom to be able to go in a nice flow through your life. I mean, is that almost like, what are we supposed, is that the goal? I see, like, I have friends who used to be like in a very well, some people quote unquote say secular way, and then they become yogi, right? Is that sort of like a good example of how they found the kingdom and now they are in total service? They have, they don't complain so much anymore. They are, all it is about wishing somebody, goodness and wellness. In particular, these are Buddhists, in their religion. I mean, at least my friend. So is that what you were trying to, is that semi the goal of, having to do these practice? Like, what are we supposed to be looking at? What is our, if there is a short-term and long-term goal in this process? I think it's so important to kind of, figure that out within ourselves, because I know it would be harmonious as well, but what it is exactly that you are envisioning when a person try to adopt these practices and they're pretty much get, the hang of it.
Yeah. So like Eckhart said, it's our souls long for union with God. This is what we really want, and there's a love aspect to that, because one of the primary things that everyone wants is feeling loved and the opportunity to love in return. So to feel loved and to love, these are the primary motivators in all of us, and they emerge even before we're born, when we're in our mother's womb. We're bathed in that. But we come out into a world where everything is so chaotic and so separate and filled with separate people and entities and things, and we begin to march into that separation from God world that humanity has created together for such a long period of time. So we all long to go back to that peaceful, harmonious union with the divine. So once we get that, then nothing else matters, right? If you have love, nothing else matters. You can do anything, be anything, and you're okay, because you're loved and you have an abundance of love to give. So all of these outer goals and outer identities and markers, just they dissolve into nothingness, because if you have love, you've got everything, you've got it all. And then right action just flows. Whatever you do, if you're doing it from that space, you're going to be a help and not a problem. You may be a problem for other people who are trying to do something else, but you're not going to be out of harmony with God. Does that answer your question, Marianne?
Yes. Yes. It's like you go round and round and round and you find yourself. And yes, I did, I was like very, like Sagrado Católico, that's how we call it. And I was like, you learn this through doctrines, you learn this through theology, and this was said from the very beginning. And then you kind of, reinvent the wheel at a certain point, and only, you go back to the basics. So I guess, yes, you did pretty much, you just targeted it, bullseye.
Good. That's what religion is for. It's all symbolic, and all the patterns are there. But the more religions endure, the more institutionalized they become, and the doctrine becomes institutionalized, and then it becomes more important what you believe in than what you actually experience. So the whole thing becomes a mechanism by which to enforce the belief system and continue the continuation of the physical institution itself, and the flow of people through it over multiple generations, coherence, in other words, institutional coherence. But they're not set up for the experience. They've lost that. So, but for a lot of people, if a person's not ready for the experience, and it's a wonderful place for them to hang out, because they're living in the symbol, inside the symbol. The inside of a church is, I'm talking about the more traditional churches like Roman Catholic and Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox, where the active use of symbolism is in play, right? The shape of the church, where the altar is placed, where the doors are, and all of that, it's all laid out symbolically. So you can't help but grow and be nurtured if you're living inside a physical representation of the mysteries. But eventually you begin to wonder, you begin to think, hey, this is still the physical world, and I still feel like there's something more. And that's when you leave the path of others and you start to venture into those unknown waters of mysticism. And then you become interested in people like Meister Eckhart, that kind of thing. You see, it begins the journey. The spiritual journey always begins with the question in our minds, what's behind all of this? Because we get the sense that all of this is just painted on something. It's like a veneer. So that's where people start the spiritual path, and then it just opens up from there.
I think it's sometimes helpful to view all of this as a stage.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
for sure.
Sometimes it's very helpful to really just try that on and, for a while and just watch it. It's almost like Saturday Night Live skits, how the
Yes. Yes.
stage changes. Yeah. If you can kind of try that on throughout your life and watch it unfold, it's pretty interesting point of view to observe.
The ancient Greeks really nailed this one. They called it the persona, the mask. And the
Right.
actors would come out on the stage in the amphitheater and they would wear masks. And that mask represented the role that they were playing.
Right.
So instead of thinking of your personality or your personal self as it is in the world as your ego and making something wrong about that, or something that you feel like you have to overcome or even kill, all kinds of crazy jargon around the ego and spiritual writings. Think of it instead as a role. And what roles are there? Your role might be that of a mother. Your role might be a father or a husband. Your role might be a mailman or a ditch digger or a professor or any a checkout person at the grocery store. That's the role that you've taken on, and you take it on with a sense of responsibility. Like you're there, you're showing up, you're there to play the role because that's what other people need from you, and in doing so you then are a responsible member of this body of, like at the highest levels we call it the body of Christ. So we voluntarily put on these masks and play the role, but we have to have the ability to take the mask off and become who we truly are. And that who we truly are has nothing to do with all of this out here. It has to do with a deeper, wider, larger dimension where we really live. And that is what we want to connect with, not to escape from this world, but to enliven this world. Right? To make this world more beautiful, more alive, more meaningful, and find that which makes all the suffering in the world bearable. Right? Because if you don't have this, the suffering of the world makes no sense, and that will make you crazy. So don't do that. All right, so we're at the top of the hour. We've been at it for about an hour now. Is there anything anybody else would like to say?
No, right
Any
now.
complaints? Okay.
Maybe just real quick.
Sure.
I was just when you were talking about how Jesus and whatever, not and whatever, but how Jesus was worried about us, or his disciples coming, being what do you call it, by evil, coming, that true evil that can mess you up.
Yeah.
That you were talking about, not the bodily harm, but the kind of get in there and just really mess with you. Yep. That's where it just came to mind about how that's where our free will comes in, and that faith that no matter what, we don't have to succumb to that. It's almost like that is it got the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, where, and again, I am horrible at remembering scriptures, but it's one of the ones that kind of touches me, where it could be seen as her, it could be seen as him, but someone's walking through darkness and they're like, where do you think you're going? What a body of something slayer, who do you think you are? And she has that, or he has that faith to be wherever it is and to be open, because they know they have the free will of not to fall victim to it. And that's what that where you said that falling back and trusting and having that faith in that light and recharging yourself every day. That's just what I got from it. So I got really excited, and epiphanies were popping up everywhere. So I just had to say thank you for that.
You bet. That's the rock, right? And what does the rock symbolize? That's solidity. That's a place to stand. That's a place where you build your house upon, is that rock.
Yep. There's a song that actually, on rock. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful.
Can I
I
add
think-
one thing, Michael, to
Yeah,
what you're saying
yeah.
there? My experience often, and this is over many decades, of when when the light is really when I feel very centered, like really centered and just open, and you're talking about plugging in. When
Yep.
I feel that sense of plugging in, it always has this sense of solidness, that it's not like solid like the table solid, but it's like it's the rock. It's like this strong presence that cannot be moved, and it just
Mhm.
emerges. It's not like something one creates. It's just what is. But when I'm plugged into that, that's what that feels like to
You
me.
know what it feels like to me? Have you ever been to the beach and have your kids bury you in sand?
Ah, yeah. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you can't move, you know. You get even a little bit of sand
Yes.
all over you.
Yes, yes. It's solid.
Yeah,
It's but
yeah.
but it's hard to describe with words, but it's that yeah, thanks. That's a really good sense
Yeah.
for it.
It's
Yes.
a feeling of being held, right? It's just the
Mm,
essence of love. It's a feeling of being held,
yeah.
and you're being held by the earth.
It's there. It's always there. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
is always there.
yep, yeah. And that alone will enable you to go through the worst experiences in your life. You know, the most challenging trouble that you can get into. If you have that, you can weather just about anything. So
Yeah.
what's worth more than that? Right.
Right.
Okay, so for this week, what I'd like you to do is to practice sitting in your chair, and then in your eyes can be open or closed, it doesn't matter. But without getting up, stand up and step aside, and then look back at yourself sitting in the chair. Okay, it's just a very simple exercise of moving your consciousness out of your body and looking from there back to your body, and see what you see. Okay, very simple exercise. And then if you want to take it a step or two further, from that point, when you're standing outside of yourself, looking at yourself, you're in a very dispassionate, objective, you have an objective perspective on yourself, and you can actually talk to the you that's sitting and advise yourself, whatever comes to mind to advise yourself, right? So it's a little way of practicing getting into your higher self and speaking to the mundane part of you. Is that enough description?
Getting
Yes.
goosebumps.
I know, right? This is, you know, people talk about spirituality, and so many of them just, you know, there's so much more. You know, there's so much more to it. This is really real stuff. This is the way to really come alive and to open up in ways that you could never imagine that you can open up. So let's check in next week. And if you want to teach essentially the same class on Saturdays, you know, I'm just doing, you know, that time period for those, because there are people in the UK and in South Africa and in India who like to come. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. This is always a lot of fun. Love to see you, and everybody's looking great.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.